Yours is recording.
Right, well, I'm really looking forward to in a moment I'm going to be chatting to my good friend Paul Sutton, who's just on his way in from doing magical work, setting up the cameras and so on.
Doing a setup?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's all going off today.
It's quite funny, actually, while Simon's out of camera, I'm just going to say what's really, really interesting is that this must be a rare thing, because your background includes being an actor, and at least in the past there'll be people to do all of this miking up. So this is quite good for those people who aren't often on camera. There's all this miking up stuff to do. But,
we're doing 2 cameras today.
Yeah, we're doing 2 cameras.
We're taking it to another level.
Yeah. Well, I'm really pleased to be here with...
I even got a shirt for this occasion.
Oh, okay, let's let you...
It's costume.
Yeah. Costume.
It's costume.
Costume drama.
Costume change.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
cool.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to be here with my very good friend, Paul Sutton. I know you're working on a project at the moment called Burglar to Buddha, and it kind of sums up your kind of story, because from quite a young age you got involved in all sorts of bits and pieces, and then you just decided to completely change your life around after a spell in prison. You have turned your life around, and you're now on a completely different journey. First of all, that journey was acting, and you made movies and so on. But now, more to the point, you're really interested in stuff around truth and connecting and people not telling their truth. So lots of people know you from Simon on the Sofa, where you interview all sorts of people from all walks of life, about their experience, and trying to really get to the core of why we're all here. And I featured you in the Soul Trader book under the section about conversations, because for me conversations are so important in life, they're so important in business, and so often people don't have the conversations, or they don't have the conversations from a really deep, powerful place. And because you're really passionate about having conversations from that deep, powerful place, I just think that you're the ideal person for me to interview here. So tell me a little bit about, where you are in that whole journey kind of now, because it's been an amazing, I guess it must have been an amazing kind of journey, man.
Yeah. And it's just want to acknowledge having another conversation with you, because we're racking up a collection at the moment, which I thoroughly enjoy. And the amount of conversations we have that are not filmed as well, which are really powerful. So I suppose you have that aspect of the dialogue that we have, and we can see how potent that is when we share from a place of truth. Where I'm at the moment is, like you said, launched Burglar to Buddha, which is really the invitation for people to really, which is a bit like your first book, but really people to look at their story, own their story, acknowledge their story, love their story, forgive their story, bring their whole identification into reality, whatever that might be. If they've done something bad, whether it be thought of bad things to do, harm somebody, done some sort of criminal activity, done anything that they're holding on to themselves, which is actually inhibiting their ability to communicate. Now then, when we bring that to the surface, and it doesn't mean you instantly go and do what I've done, because I'm at a further along stage of my ability to express completely, truthfully, transparently. Some people are not ready to go, yeah, I've burgled houses, or some people are not ready to say, yeah, I've taken ecstasy tablets and so on, because that can really inhibit their story that they're still in. What I'm inviting people to do is own the whole story, go on a cathartic journey by expressing that through writing, talking, building up the trust and the confidence within themselves, to then be able to use that through expression, and then more importantly, once they get to that point, actually let it go, because you're not your story.
Right, and this is interesting, because I think this is what's really interesting about your story, isn't it? Because you moved from the stuff that wasn't serving you, like all the stuff that you talked about, and you realised that's not working for me. Then you completely changed your life. You decided you were going to be an actor. You pursued that. You did lots of stuff, and it's interesting in that you're playing all sorts of different in all these kind of stories and so on. But then that wasn't enough, and then your work now is around all this kind of stuff around conversations and helping people shed their stories. So it's really interesting that you've got your whole business now revolves around that shedding of the story, and that must be quite powerful. But I know also it's really important to you to live that, so I know that you're personally really passionate about living from that kind of space. I know that for you, what you eat, how mindful about what it is that you eat, how it is that you speak to people, having kind of conversations from the perspective of how it is that you're feeling, really connecting them on a deep level in everything, and you build your business on that level. So even how it is that you want to market the things that you're wanting to do, you're really mindful that you're wanting to do that in a really conscious way. How do you find that? Is that kind of easy when you're deciding to run your business from that very authentic space. How do you find that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I was mindful that we were also, projecting well enough for the camera so that they can hear this as well. But it was, it's funny you say this, and I know it's also about, the wonderful book you've written and bringing that into, the work that you do from a business perspective. What I would probably throw out there from what you just said is actually this. I don't see this as a business. So this is a life. This is a lifestyle. This is like my lifestyle. This is what I do. This is what I live. This is and I've had businesses. I've done businesses. I've tried the entrepreneurial route. I've gone to the accountants. I've got the the business plan. I've sat down and been stressing over what we might do, what we might not do.
Run a
car valeting business and like thinking about well, how am I doing this and so on. So I'm not very conventional in terms of like even where I'm at right now. I'm doing Simon on the Sofa, Burglar to Buddha, and the projects that I do. It's actually more about a lifestyle with that authentic intention, which will support you and sustain you on every level. More ways than just thinking that your bank balance and you need to go and see a business manager to get a bank loan to make some money of some kind. Because actually what I'm looking at in the journey that I'm on from this transparent communication perspective is that when we all start to communicate our truth, business as we know it will not be there anymore.
Oh well, what you're saying is really so beautiful and so very powerful. And I'm so glad that you said it, because business is different things to different people, isn't it? For some people, it's what you described. You go to the country and doing this business because it's supporting the lifestyle or whatever it is that I'm wanting to do. But you're actually saying, first and foremost, this is just kind of life, and what you're doing is just an extension of that, and that you're just then nourished by the nature of what you're doing, and that completely changes the dynamic. And I think lots of people really resonate, because I think that that's what they're wanting to do, but you're very aware that that's what's going on. So from knowing you, I know that therefore you start every day and everything from that space of what is true to living in that particular kind of a particular kind of a space. How do you find that then? Because you've had a period of time, presumably when you're doing stuff like the acting and so on, with some things, with some of those projects, they're very, very well paid. When somebody's working from a perspective of just what kind of emerges, that can throw lots of people into a kind of a scary position, because sometimes they're just creating everything kind of from scratch.
Yeah.
How have you found that, and how do you find that you manage what you commercially need to do with just living from that space, or is it even that's not even a consideration anymore? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Again, really, as always, potent questions. So I would probably see them. Nothing is separate, but I would see them as okay. There's many different facets to the call it the avenues, the pathways that bring me resources. I'm going to use the word resources rather than just money, because a lot of what I do also brings, I get a lot of wealth and a lot of support and a lot of opportunity and possibility from avenues that you wouldn't even think of when you go on a path.
Well, this is good, and I want to touch on that a bit, because again, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that's touched on the book, the importance of being creative. Because one person, one thing, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, because money's just one form of exchange, isn't it? One of the things I'm talking about in the book is that, some people might share things, some people might swap, one person does one thing for somebody else, one person does somebody's bookkeeping for somebody else, the other person happens to bake cakes and they do food for them or whatever. Yeah. There's so many different ways in which people can be supportive and do business in a way that is actually nourishing, and that is at the core of what business and commerce is about, because it's just about exchanging. So I think that what you're saying there is something really important, which is really fundamental about what business is actually about. It's about serving. One person happens to produce milk and they've got cows or whatever, somebody happens to be a musician or whatever. It's just about exchange, and I think that what you're saying is so powerful. In times that we're in, where actually very often people are leading to think completely differently about how it is that they're wanting to do business or how it is that they're wanting to live. So it must be quite enriching living in that particular kind of way. Yeah,
it's enriching, but it's also very unfamiliar, and it's very scary. So when I meet people and they come into what I'm doing and I sit down with them, for example, and I just want to clarify on your last question, just to bring it in there, when I do a paid job for somebody else, so say you're a director and you say to me, Simon, I want you to perform my film, then obviously at that point I go, okay, so how much are you paying, or how much budget do you have? You then pay me, so I come in, I do it. I respect your terms and what you're doing, and you pay me and I go away and that's my pot of money and I do what I want with it. Yeah, so that's just to clarify that.
Yeah.
In terms of me and the way that money comes to me and the way that business comes to me and the way that I do business with people, I've changed my whole way of being to the point where I will now sit down with somebody and say, anything that you're about to embark on with me, whether that be on a voluntary basis, whether that be on a role basis, or there's any sort of exchange of money or whatever, what I really want us to look at is this serving your highest good? So if somebody's coming to volunteer for me, if they're even going to hold space at an event, they have to want to be at that event to the utmost passion that they really, really want to be at that event, because it's serving their highest good, whether that be because they're getting some experience, whether it's because they want to be in that environment, whether it's because they like the energy of the people that are coming, whether it be because they just want to get out in bed in the morning and be with different people, and these people might be at this event. Whatever it is, it has to serve them, because if we tackle that first and foremost, everything else will look after itself, because you've got a group of people that want to be there.
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is so powerful. I think it's really so powerful, and it's one of the things that is, for me, fundamental in our whole sole trader journey, because one's so clear about who one is, what one's about, and one's own values, so that everybody who's involved, be it somebody who's a staff member, an employee, a business partner, or even a supplier, you're actually on the same page. Then the possibilities then become really, really huge. And I think that what you were saying, and even as you were saying it, that was very, very energizing, because it completely changes the game. And it makes me think that, you know, in so many places, if we think about even how often, particularly when businesses grow, that's completely lost. You're particularly here, you're doing this, and it's almost like you don't have a say. There's no connection. You might not even feel completely dispassionate about that. You're just being paid.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
It's disconnection.
It's just completely absurd, isn't it? And it's not sustainable. So I think what you're saying is really exciting. And I loved also when you were saying, and I just want to touch a little bit about this before we close, but I love when you said that, you know, it's very exciting, but it's also kind of quite challenging, isn't it?
Yeah. And unfamiliar, I said, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, so from that perspective, recently I've met this wonderful woman, and I want somebody to come on board and journey with me and help me out. So, you know, there's no decision around that until we've had a number of get-togethers, and also within that there's a lot of identity that comes up from each of the people, that, you know, how it might be, how that role might be, and to the point where even the woman you mentioned said, oh, you know, I don't even know if I can do that role, and I'm like, great. I want somebody that doesn't know that they can do that role, but is dedicated to coming on the journey, because as you dive into the unknown, the infinite possibilities that can open from that place are boundless. And also, if you give somebody the platform, the blank canvas, to really express themselves fully, you have no clue what they can achieve. And just to throw in there, when you said it's a challenge, the challenge is that there's no status labels for a lot of this. So, for example, if I say, okay, so am I your assistant? No, you're not my assistant. You're an equal being to me. Assistant for me tells me that you've got to run around after me and you do as you're told.
Yeah.
That's a different terminology.
Yeah.
You are a co-creator, collective being with me.
Yeah.
And whatever you're doing, I respect you as much as I respect the person making the tea, as the person taking out the rubbish, as the person that's doing the paperwork, the accountant, the banker, whoever.
And that's very, very powerful and very important, because sometimes, again, we get caught up in roles. And there's something you were saying that also made me think about how that can work very beautifully, going back, and you're talking about, obviously, having been in film, I was mentioning that you happen to be in film. It's quite interesting, isn't it, sometimes those roles where there is that blank canvas and you bring that person on board because you just have a sense that they will bring something to it, and it may not even be completely formed. And I think there's stuff we can learn from that whole creative space when it comes to business, when it comes to ultimately what you're saying beyond business, creating the kind of things that need to be creating and serving people. Well, it's really exciting and amazing to speak to you. I'm really wishing you all the best with the latest kind of projects. I'm just going to just leave a final word.
What I was just going to throw in there with you just to say this. This also does mean, because you said this to me before. In fact, you said it to me a couple of nights ago when we were talking on the phone. See if you can remember, just because I think it's really, really poignant for this conversation. Do you remember we were talking about people not stepping up, but being at the same frequency and vibration? Can you remember the terminology used? But you might not. But because the reason being, what I mean is that you don't just bring somebody in and they need completely looking after, nurturing, they need coaching, they need loads of work, and actually they're just pulling yourself down. You pull somebody in who's ready to step into that unfamiliarity and go, Whoa.
Yeah.
I really, this feels new. This feels
I think there's
different.
something very powerful about that, isn't it? Because it's about getting the right people in, really the right people who have the right values, have the right skills, and I think there's something about not playing that down, being very, very clear. And sometimes, having people. There's one of the things in the book that I remember I once had an interview with the singer Bjork, and she was saying, I want to work with people who are better than me, or at least as good as me, better than me, because that's going to bring out the best in me.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So you raise the game from each other.
So you're raising the game, but they're also absolutely authentic on that journey that you're on, and then that can. The possibilities that can emerge from that are just
and the support and so on. And did we? I know we've got to stop now, but did we need to touch on the? We didn't need to touch on the money in this conversation, did we?
Well, I think
we can touch on that maybe in the other one.
But I think, well, in a way, you've kind of touched on a really interesting aspect about even just money and so on. Because I think what's interesting and that's going to come through in some of these discussions is that money is one of those issues that lots of people in business struggle with from all different kind of perspectives. And I was just speaking to a finance expert in the interview before this, and I think that on the one hand, lots of people want the money or they need the money in order to make their business carry on and for cash flow. And lots of people also are afraid of the money or they don't understand in terms of money. I think one of the things that's really, really interesting about what you're talking about is that you're first and foremost doing what you're doing because you love doing what you're doing and because what you're doing is what you feel needs to be done, and that you have a trust that from operating from that space, whatever it is that you need for that is going to emerge, whether it's being something that's being paid for, if it's being exchanged and so on, which is really wonderful. So that you've ended on that kind of trust kind of aspect in terms of business, and I guess that thing about flow, and maybe that's a good place to go, because I think what's really been exciting about your whole journey is that there has been this flow from this moment where you kind of decided, okay, this stuff that I was doing before doesn't resonate with me. You know what, I can step up, I can be an actor, I can do this. And then thinking, hang on a minute, this doesn't resonate with me anymore. I'm really wanting to do business from this space, or I'm wanting to live my life from a space where I'm going on this journey to find truth, to have conversations with people through truth.
Yeah.
So I get the feeling that there's an amazing flow, and you've talked about in terms of your life, how it is you live, the kind of people that you meet and work with. That must be exciting, right? Just living from that space of flow and trust, because one of the things in the book is around change and flow and kind of
we changed the last chapter, right?
Yeah,
which is all about that, and it's interesting because when you get to a certain place, actually what's really exciting is actually the potential of what hasn't been created yet. Yeah. So I'm really excited about actually an evolution of not only our society. I'm excited about the dissolving of the financial system. I'm excited about business dissolving. I'm excited about the whole of the structures that we've built up so far completely dissolving, and new ways that we can come together to co-create. And like you said in the book, this book is for us to talk about from our heart, to look at what our heart wants. Well, if you go into that in business, most businesses, if you go into what their heart wants, is not actually what's driving them.
I like what you're saying, because I think one of the last bits in the book is talking about moving from that transactional business to transformational business.
Beautiful.
And how it is one can just operate from that heart space, and that might mean the whole way in which we do business changes, or actually reverts back to what is at the core of any relationship or connection that works. That two people are genuinely exchanging stuff from that place of well-being, supporting, giving, as they do in friendships and all sorts of family connections and all sorts of connections.
So there's no separation from the extension of what you're doing tomorrow. I'm going to work 5 days a week, and the weekend I get my time. It's all one time.
That's wonderful.
One time of just connection, collaboration, evolution, expansion, and also support. I love what you said in the book about actually, the idea of conscious business. I know we're going to talk about that later, but the idea of that people really creating something that they know is serving another person. Everything I do is about serving. That's the other beautiful thing. Before it was about making money. Before it was about making money. Before it's like, okay, I'm going to create a product that's going to sell to kids, and kids are going to buy it, and we'll make millions. Now I'm like, does this serve the whole of humanity? No. Why do I want to do it?
I think that's wonderful. I just think that's a wonderful point to end it on. I'm just going to let you smile, and I'm going to turn off the camera. But I just want to thank you very much, and I'm wishing you all the best with the exciting projects, all the best with Burglar to Buddha. I know that your plans to turn that into a book, into a play, and I know there's all sorts of work you've got around there. All the best continued work with other work and Simon on the Sofa. And thank you very much. Looking forward to many more transparent
all the best
conversations.
with the book.
Thank you very much. A pleasure.